Hello. Pastor West, thank you so much, and thanks for making the case for Kamala Harris. I want to say something about that in a minute that I think is really important. But I thank my longtime friend, Governor Bob Miller, and Sandy. I love them, and if it weren't for them and the late Harry Reid and Landra, I don't know if I'd have won Nevada twice. It hadn't been done for a very long time by a Democrat when I won. I think Lyndon Johnson was the last Democrat to carry Nevada. So you voted for me twice, and I'm very grateful. I think I want to thank Assemblywoman Cecilia Gonzalez for being here, and the co-founder of Dream Big Nevada, Astrid Silva, who was wonderful to Hillary when she ran, and I bring greetings from her, and we thank you. Now let me say a serious thing or two. I think Jackie Rosen is an extraordinary senator. And when we started this election season, nobody thought, I mean nobody thought, that the Democrats had a chance to hold the Senate. Because we had every vulnerable Democrat up, and they had like nobody who was vulnerable up, including Ted Cruz in Texas. So yesterday I did an event for our candidate, Colin Allred, who was born and reared by a single mother, rose out of very meager circumstances, became a great football player at Baylor, was a pro for 5 years. He's more or less twice my size. And God, the guy's big as me. But anyway, but he got injured, and it ended his career. And instead of folding, he went back to law school, became a voting rights lawyer, and became somebody that anybody would be proud of. And he's universally, he reminds me of Jackie in many ways in his career. He's universally admired. One of his constituents is George W. Bush. And President Bush told me, he said, this guy is great. You know, he's just a good man, and he's on the level. So I told him that since 60-something% of the people in Texas could remember that Ted Cruz jetted off to Cancun when Texas was freezing, his slogan ought to be Can Cruz. And, you know, I'm not very good at this, but that was pretty good. I don't have a slogan for Jackie Rosen, but I want to tell you something. She is the embodiment of what I believe we need in the way we govern. And I'll give you an example. She's one of the most bipartisan members of the Congress. She's 90% of the bills she's introduced has had at least one Republican co-sponsor. 90%. Now, this guy who's running against her, his whole campaign is, you have to have somebody who is all Trump all the time, no guardrails, whatever he wants is fine with me. And you know, that is not a good idea. And the United States Congress, even if you like Trump, it's a terrible idea. The U.S. Congress is supposed to have guardrails. The Supreme Court is supposed to have guardrails. He gave us a Supreme Court that basically issued the darndest ruling I ever saw, saying, oh, once you're president, you're totally immune from any action while you're in office. And by the way, whatever you do when you're in office, as long as it's in any way related to your job, cannot expose you to criminal liability. Now, as you might imagine, people like Hillary and me and Barack Obama have thought that was interesting because I can just hear him now. He's got the speech written. I took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. I think Hillary and Bill and Barack are a threat to America's future. And, you know, I suppose I could have them executed for treason, but I'm a really good guy, you know. So I'm going to send them to the Supermax in Colorado for the rest of their life. So I've already got a petition prepared saying, dear Mr. President, if you're going to send me away, just remember this, I'm nearly as old as you are. And I don't like the cold. So can you at least send me to some prison in Florida or someplace where it's warm? I'd take Nevada, I'd certainly, or Arizona or something. So anyway, if the worst happens and they do that, y'all come see us, will you? Now, we're laughing about this, but it's not funny. It is not funny at all. The only way, so let's talk about what I think is going on, and I've had a chance to talk to Jackie about it a little bit. But I want to start, I think, just for being a leader and putting together the infrastructure bill alone is enough to justify her reelection. And I talked to one of the people who works for President Biden, Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, in implementing this, and he said, you know, we've got like 60,000 projects out there. Yeah. And pretty soon we're going to have 100,000. And every one of them is creating good American jobs and is making it less likely that you'll read those tragic stories of bridges breaking and people drowning and all that. With all this problem we're having with storms, because the climate is changing, we're going to have to build more resilient structures. We're going to have to reinforce our infrastructure. In Nevada alone, there are about 9% of the people who don't have access to affordable broadband. And that's part of infrastructure too. And it will make a huge difference in the way those people have to live. Now, Donald Trump promised us an infrastructure bill, and Joe Biden did. Only trouble is, only one of them delivered. Biden delivered. So, the other thing I want to say is, I mean, I get this. One of the things I learned when I was president is the bigger your constituency, the longer it takes people to realize that something that affects everybody has changed. For example, when I came here running in '92, I said, look, this trickle-down economics won't work. And we're going to have to change it. And you've been eating the sugar of trickle-down economics for 12 years, and nobody's made you go to the dentist. So you're not going to be happy about everything I do, but we've got to do it to stabilize the economy. And the whole trickle-down, Kyle, is everything's a free lunch, you know. It's like Trump, just spend all the money, not worry about it. So it took 3 full years with the deficit going down before a majority of Americans would say in a poll, yes, it's going down. And Donald Trump got so lucky in 2016. And first he had Jimmy Comey helping him and Putin and all of them, but he wants to get lucky again. Let me tell you what happened. Our economy was roaring in Barack Obama's last 2 years. And you remember, Trump kept telling everybody how terrible it was. Oh, it's so terrible. So what happened? He gets elected, and all of a sudden, the sun's shining. He's the best guy I ever saw at taking credit for things. I blame it. Sun shines today. I made that happen. It rained yesterday. If I'd been president, it never would have happened. So he gets elected and he has 2 good years. That's the tail end of the Obama recovery. It took a long time because the crash was so bad in 2008. And you suffered. You were one of the top 3 states in the country that suffered from what happened in 2008. So what happens now? When Joe Biden leaves office, the Biden-Harris administration will have produced the largest number of jobs in 4 years that have ever been produced in the history of the United States. And we're the best positioned country in the world for the 21st century because of the infrastructure bill, which 40% of the Republicans in the Senate voted for, but only 24% in the House. And because of the CHIPS bill, which is revolutionizing manufacturing and giving us the ability to produce really important things more quickly with no supply chain problems because it's here, which got 40% of the vote in the House and only, I think, 20% or so in this, 20% or so in the House and 40% in the Senate. And the Inflation Reduction Act, which got, listen to this, which got 0 votes from the Republicans in the House or the Senate, and her opponent has criticized aspects of it that control inflation. The $35 a month cap on insulin. That's a big deal. Do you know how many people in this country have type 2 diabetes? That's the kind you get from living, from type 1. It has a $2,000 per year limit on how much people on Medicare pay. Now, her opponent has criticized that. And President Trump's crowd has promised to repeal it. And that'll really hurt a lot of people. Kamala Harris has promised not just to keep it, but to expand its coverage to younger people in income groups that need it. So in these last 2 weeks, I don't want you to spend a great deal of time bad-mouthing Trump. I want you to tell people why Harris is better. This is what they're going to do. These are the real differences. There was an amazing article in the Washington Post today that looked at 8 big issues in the campaign. And they said it's stunning when people know her position and his, they like hers better. Except where they agree, like not taxing tips anymore. which is a big deal here. But you don't have to vote for him to get that because they're both for that. And when they understand what was in her immigration bill, they like hers better. And I'd like to explain that. First of all this business about how we had open borders, it's bull. Obama administration sent more people home from the border than Trump's did. But there is a law signed by Lyndon Johnson which says that if you show up at our border with a credible threat to your safety or the safety of your family, you are entitled to be taken in as a migrant in emergency settings. You can go to work within a few months, but you have to get in line behind everybody else before you can apply to be a citizen, because the people that follow the rules deserve to do that. That's what the law is. And what nobody could have foreseen is that all these upheavals all around the world have produced the largest number of immigrants in Europe and Africa and Asia, all over the world, that we've had since World War II. So not surprising, the people that live near here like America and they'd like to have a chance. And we're sympathetic with it, but there's a limit to how many people we can process at once. The last significant immigration reform we had was in 1983, when President Reagan and the Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill reached an agreement and everybody accepted it, and nobody demonized immigrants the way Trump does now. We just did it because we knew we needed, even then, we were a nation of immigrants. Now, our birth rate is well below replacement level. Well below. And unless we get, all of a sudden start having babies like crazy, we're going to have some help here. All this AI craze, they ain't going to make up all these jobs, trust me. So what did Joe Biden and Kamala Harris offer? They went to the Republicans, the most conservative Republicans in the Senate, who were the most anti-immigration, and said, look, we'll let you write the part of this legislation which limits the number of immigrants for the next couple of years that we can take if the monthly total gets above X. I think it was, I don't know, 5,000 a day or something, whatever it was. Anyway, we'll let you limit it. But we want you to do something for us. We want you to let us build enough housing along the border that we don't have to divide parents and children anymore. We want you to hire enough judges and lawyers and advocates and all the people who have to go through all the rigmarole to determine whether these people really are eligible to come, so that they don't have a backlog of years. And then we want enough people there who can vet folks who come for their background. Because it's very important to me. If you look at the crime rate among immigrants, it's considerably lower than that of the native born. The average, every 5 immigrants creates 6 jobs for native born Americans. The small business formation rate is more than twice that of the native born. Still, the American people are entitled to get rid of the chaos. And, you know, Barack Obama took a lot of heat when he was president, but he was doing the right thing, trying to make sure that we have an orderly system that was not out of hand. And then all of a sudden, boom, we had the biggest problem. So there is not a person in this room that could have followed the law and run this system right when a system built to handle 400,000 people a year, all of a sudden had 1.8 to 2 million people a year showing up. Nobody could do it. I couldn't have done it, nobody else did. So, in other words, they had a fix. And the most conservative Republicans in the Senate signed on to it. And we were gonna roll that thing. Finally, a fix so we didn't turn immigrants into punching bags, and we didn't make people at risk because people got in who shouldn't have. And what happened? One person killed it. Donald Trump said to all his supporters, "You can't do that." Oh, you can't do that. You don't understand. I need a problem, not a solution. My whole political career is getting people to be mad at somebody else for a problem. And then making sure it doesn't get fixed. Now, this is about how you govern. This country cannot do what it needs to do if we're more interested in division and subtraction than addition and multiplication. We've got to do this. So, and it can be done, which I think is why I don't understand why Jackie's not winning by 20 points here. Vote for me, I'll be just like Donald Trump. I'll keep people torn up and upset all the time. I'll keep people mad. You'll be happy. I'll always blame somebody else. Or you could be like her and figure out how to work with Democrats and Republicans and solve problems, make problems. Just a couple more points on Vice President. Hillary has known her for 30 years. I haven't known her for 30 years, but I've known her for a good while. And look, I'm getting pretty old to do this, even though I'm still younger than Trump. Look, I just spent 4 days in North Carolina and 3.5 in Georgia. I'm doing my best here because what I'm campaigning for is my grandchildren's future. And it means a lot to me. I see how hard our daughter Chelsea has worked to teach these kids to take responsibility from an early age. If you make a mistake, fess up. I'm not going to quit loving you. Dad and I love you unconditionally, but you have to fess up if you make a mistake, and then we'll try to figure out how to correct it and not make it again. Be kind, be brave. Treat everybody the same. And I do not want them to grow up in a country where there's one set of rules for the dominant class and another set for everybody else. If you believe in addition and multiplication, the only way it works is if we all live under the same set of rules. If we all look at here and say, look at the diversity in this crowd. This is good. Diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous. But diverse groups only get to make those good decisions if our common humanity matters more than our interesting differences. And so, I mean, I got to give it to President Trump. He is a genius at making people feel resentment. He is a genius at making people find somebody else to blame. it may be good politics, but it's a terrible way to run a country. So let me just give you one little example. Everybody's upset about inflation and food prices. You have a right to be, but you also have a right to know what happened. Every major country in the world has had inflation in food prices. Because when COVID happened, all the supply chains were messed up. And when you got demand up here and supply down here, you know what's going to happen to the price. It's going to go up. If everybody in Las Vegas decided tomorrow, or just the people in this room decided tomorrow, that you couldn't go anywhere else in a car, you were going to all have to drive scooters. Well, think about this. So, you know, can't afford the gas, you just don't want to fool with it, you're going to ride scooters. Everybody decides tomorrow. And then it turns out there's only 10 scooters on sale in Las Vegas. What's going to happen to the price of scooters? Now, that's what happened to food prices in the beginning. So what are you going to do about it? Donald Trump said there was no inflation under me. There wasn't, the economy collapsed. There was nothing to buy, right? So you had to vote for me. Kamala Harris said, look, we got inflation. We had to put some money into the economy to get it going again after COVID. And we had to run the risk, if we wanted to get over it in a hurry, that we'd overdo it a little bit. But the main problem is the supply chains. So now they get rebuilt and inflation is tailing off, but things are still higher than they were. The only person running in this whole race who has made a practical solution to put on the table is Kamala Harris, because she was an attorney general and she knows that nearly every state in the country, red and blue, has a price gouging law. Like if you can prove somebody that is not in a competitive situation, they got a dominant situation, and they're charging you way more than their price, you can get them to lower the price. You can take them to court and lower the price. We never had a national price gouging law, but the grocery business today is largely organized around a relatively small number of us who shop from independent grocers. They get their money, their food, from distributors, and they're totally at the mercy of what the distributors charge them. And then most Americans get their food from one of 5 big chains with millions and millions and millions and millions of customers. So they typically earn between 2% and 4% profit. Sounds like a small margin, but if you got 100 million customers, going from 3 to 4% is a big deal. And that money all comes out of the hide of the people buying the food. So what Kamala said is, look, I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything. And I don't want anybody to go broke. But we deserve, it's been a good while now since we've had our supply chain back up, and we deserve to know. And if the Justice Department can look into these things, we will know. And if the grocers know this is going to happen, they'll be a lot more reluctant to raise prices of what should be done. So if the issue is health care, or the issue is infrastructure, or the issue is food prices, it's not close. And gas prices are going down. And we are producing more energy than we use in America for the first time since the 1950s. And that's going to get better because places like Nevada have the capacity to produce unlimited energy from all available sources. So what's left? Housing. Now, you got hit by housing because you got hit so hard by the crash. So then all these people leave Las Vegas and the rest of Nevada, right? And then when everybody wants to come back, when the prices were dirt cheap for the housing, a lot of big banks came in and bought them all up. And then they're jacking up the price. So here's what she proposed to do about that. Trump hasn't proposed anything. She said, look, we should build 3 million more housing units, located strategically where they're needed and where they will have the most impact on holding other prices down. And then we should make them as affordable as possible and then give people help on down payments. Significant help. It's the most innovative thing that's been produced in a long, long time since we set out to cure homelessness in my first term. I mean, this is really significant. And nobody talks about it because you turn on the news every night or you get on your computer and you just want to see which side call the other one a more clever name. Or we get to watch Mr. Trump sway at the, but look, we're laughing, but it ain't funny if somebody stays home because they don't know what's at stake. It's not funny if somebody buys the Trump argument that you have to vote for me because of inflation. It's not funny if you wake up the next day and you say, oh my God, I got to worry about the Supreme Court again. They just had the most right-wing term in 100 years. You'd think that would be enough, but it's not. So that's what I want you to think about. And again, I know there's not a lot of votes in this, but it really bothers me that he is going to be totally unaccountable if he gets elected. That Supreme Court gave him a green light that, you know, I never dreamed I had. And I shouldn't have. And, you know, now everybody knows what they got to do to get close to him. When he says, you're going to believe me or your lying eyes, you have to say, you, master. Poor old J.D. Vance, I felt sorry for him. He made all that money in the tech business and grew up kind of like I did, in an alcoholic home, didn't have a lot of money, and all of a sudden he goes off and goes to Ohio State, was in the military, and then got to go to Yale Law School and get rich. But the one thing that I didn't do when I went to that law school is forget basic arithmetic. And he says last week, finally, he broke the last little shred of independence he had, was he would not say that Biden was not the true winner of the election until last week, but he knew the price. So he said, yep, Trump won in 2020. That means who's going to be in the room? You know, I think Al Gore was a great vice president, and one reason, and I picked him for two reasons. One, he knew things I didn't know. He knew more about weapon systems. He knew more about the details of nuclear energy, even though I knew quite a bit about that. And one reason I sided with you on that is that the oldest continuously operating nuclear power plant in the U.S. is in my native state. And we did need some place to put the waste. But I also know I live in a state with a big earthquake fault, just like you do. And anybody who ever looked at the map in Nevada would say they want to put this thing here because they don't have many electoral votes. Because nobody in their right mind would endanger all the assets you've got in this state with the fractures you might have in the ground. So that's it. If you look at the environment, if you look at the Education, I haven't even talked about that. They want to get rid of the Department of Education. So, look, it's a clear thing. And you got a big article in the paper today that you can get online. It was in the Washington Post saying, here are 8 things that people really care about, and they don't know what Kamala Harris's position is, and they don't realize that they like her position a lot better than Donald Trump's. We can run away with this thing still, but we got to care enough to show up. We got to care enough to talk to our neighbors. We got to care enough to bring people in. We've got to care. So, my beloved mother thought she was going to Las Vegas when she died. She thought this is what heaven looked like. And I came to love this place a lot because of her and a lot because of my friends here. But it's going to be really hard for us to win if we don't carry here. And we certainly can't hold the Senate if we don't carry here. So I will say this, go out and talk to people.
Yes, sir.
And don't get mad. And don't do what Trump and his friends do. Don't call anybody any names. Just say, look, I'd like to talk to you about this. I'd like to explain why I feel the way I do. You'll be surprised. You will have some success, and we'll have a great victory, but it's all up to you. God bless you. Thank you.